Feels kind of odd calling Throgg underrated, especially given that Norsca only has 3 Lord choices, but when Wulfric is one of the top 5 non-caster Lords in the entire game, Throgg can often get overshadowed. I mean, yes, he does have regeneration, but consider that with regeneration plus, I should say his healing cap plus his base HP, Throgg is I think less HP than Wulfric on the Mammoth. I'd have to double check that, but that seems about right. Anyway, I'm up against Spudhouse once again, playing Norsca into his Beastmen. Definitely he is... I don't know if he would consider himself a Beastman main necessarily, perhaps, but definitely getting in some practice here. So we're going to go over the builds shortly. We've got Werekin hiding in the woods with a couple Skin Wolves. The idea here with the Werekin, Throgg, and the Skin Wolves is Beastmen don't have access to fire damage. The regeneration can kind of help out attrition them, right? We've got some Berserkers and Marauders in the front line, some Horsemen skirmishing with these Centaurs. Got a couple of regular Centaurs and the ROR. Some Bestigor herd as well. 3 Bestigor, Butchers of Kalkengard for some Terror, Ungor Spearman herd, and Malagor leading the way. A little bit of a fun pick. Malagor is somewhat risky here, can get stepped on by a Mammoth, but yeah, for my caster, I've got a Lore of Death. Sorcerer here, totally forgot to bring Aspect of Dread Knight, which I meant to, so I don't have any Terror myself, but we'll see. Might be able to get it done anyway. Throgg's going to push out to this side here. Of course, he's got Frostbite, anti-large AP. 55 armor's okay. Has decent abilities as well. That melee attack buff pretty nice. But Malagor starting things off right. Bunker busting those Berserkers with a little bit of, what do you call it? Vile Tide, that's it. Also going to get in combat. These Bestigor on the charge here will do an insane amount of damage. And I honestly don't have that much AP in this army. But right now, just trying to fend off these Centaurs on the flanks here. The Sons of Goros, actually, with the magic damage, will circumvent the physical resistance of these Skin Wolves, so this is a really nice engagement. But Throgg just kind of bumbling around the battlefield at this point. We're going to come in here, potentially drop some support buffs, try and go after the Butchers of Kalkengard with that anti-large AP damage. You know, they also have regeneration, right? And I have not brought any fire, so Throgg going to get in here and mix it up with his, distant, like, second or third cousin removed Minotaurs. I don't know. I don't think Minotaurs are actually related to trolls in any way, but yeah, Throgg, super fun here. Just gonna kick some Minotaurs in the face. Marauders screening here. Do have to kind of pull out of this engagement as the Skin Wolves are eventually starting to lose out to the Centaurs, so we're gonna kind of try and saturate, maybe screen through the archers a little bit here. Spudhouse pushed around with his spears, though, has mostly won the infantry fight. The Bestigor, and the Centaur support proving superior over the Berserkers. I've got this pocket still holding up for now, but definitely not looking great in the front line so far. But Throgg will be able to hold up and kind of skirmish back and do a little bit of kiting here with these Marauder Horsemen. Getting some nice jabs into the Butchers of Kalkengard as they kind of drop their order here. We'll get online shortly, but we did manage to chew a couple models right there, which is pretty nice. Centaur is immediately going to come in and occupy here. A little bit of a devolve, doing some pretty nice damage, a little bit of leadership damage too. Maybe help rout off those Marauder Horsemen. But yeah, from my perspective, things are not looking amazing. I do have some units coming back though over here. Berserkers now, as they get more of a sustained against like this sort of weirdly tattered, not necessarily tattered, but kind of spread out unit of Bestigor. They actually will chew through a few models there, so a little bit of a strange engagement, but my caster just getting terrified by the Butchers of Kalkengard. Pretty rough stuff. Look at this though, the important units for me are the ones that are regenerating, right? Throgg still mostly healthy, the Werekin still mostly healthy, the Skin Wolves themselves only 10 of 18 unit models, but still, I mean, that's more than half, and if they can get some regeneration in, could definitely help contribute some more. Marauder Horsemen coming back as well, so things are looking a bit grim, but not too grim. Berserkers coming back in the periphery can actually clean up some of these Beastmen infantry here. These Ungors are not going to stand a chance against the Berserkers, as long as I don't have to fight the Bestigor. And right now we're keeping them occupied in the center. Throgg is getting pretty low here, though. He did pop Fight or Die, and I think I'm going to layer on the Crown of Command after, looking at his abilities again. Obviously got Crown of Command here. Makes unbreakable all allies in a 40 meter radius for 24 seconds. Pretty solid. Unbreakable can be pretty nice. For a faction like Norsca that has okay leadership, it's kind of like, maybe lower middle of the pack in terms of leadership. Definitely be quite helpful. For units like Trolls and Famir, especially too, that don't have great leadership for the cost. And actually, melee attack buffs, I've been doing a little bit of research lately. It does seem like melee attack buffs are potentially slightly more worth it, or slightly better in general than melee defense buffs, although Norsca certainly could do with some defensive buffs, no doubt about it. I also brought the Vomit, might come into play in the late game, potentially. Haven't really used it too much so far, but a lot of Beastmen infantry left, so if we can force up a blob here somewhere, get a little bit of, you know, copious Vomit going, that'll be pretty good. Marauder Horsemen moving in, trying to finish off those very Hattered Centaurs in the late game. Again, out in the periphery, the Berserkers have kind of just traded with what was left of the Beastmen army, but things are not looking great for me on the balance of power as these two kind of get surrounded here. The Ungor Spearman Herd trading super cost-effectively in this engagement. Vestigor also, I mean, again, 55 armor for Throgg's okay. It's not great, honestly. But while he's near the Werekin, he does get a little bit extra from the Werekin's little AoE ability, which is quite nice. Also gives missile resistance, which isn't coming into play here, but you know, definitely would. The Werekin with that ability, though, goes up to 93, which is definitely pretty good. But a best score, of course, have great armor piercing, good charge bonus as well, so that kind of cycling in and out here can do some good damage. Looking at a wide view once again, we've got a handful of very, very tattered Marauders coming back. This unit of Marauder Horsemen also going to be pretty key. But let's keep it close. We'll watch the Troll King kind of kick and smash. Malagor, not wanting any of that engagement himself, is going to pull away, obviously. A little bit of a devolve. Try and finish off the leadership here. Does a little bit of damage as well. I think the devolve scaling is something like 75 models max. I'd have to double check. Maybe one of you guys will correct me in the comments, but I want to say Traderkin's like maybe 12 models max, or like something weird like 3 models max. I don't know. Anyway. Butcher's coming back, so I'm going to just immediately countercharge with Throgg. Throgg himself, 50 charge bonus is pretty solid. It's definitely up there, but he gets terrified, actually, by the Butchers of Kalkengard, which is really not good for me. Balance of power dips dangerously low here. Skinwolf Werekin also potentially going to get routed here. He does have immune to psychology, thankfully baseline, so not going to get terrified, but I actually issue an order on the Butchers, so he's going to try and catch them up. Actually does swipe one there in the back. Oh yeah, the Werekin, just werewolf on, you know, Minotaur action. Fun to see. Something just happened there. Oh yeah, the Skinwolves and the Minotaurs just like straight up had a bumper car situation, sent each other flying. And the nice karate chop to the back of the neck here from the Werekin. All this allows Throgg to regenerate a little bit. He comes back. Leadership's doing okay. He can get in here and potentially get some action. The Marauder Horsemen came back as well, used up the last of their ammunition, so just waiting on them to try and get a rear charge penalty once Throgg gets in range to puke. And here we go. Charging in again. Werekin's getting a little low on leadership, so I needed to get in there and make sure he didn't rout. Also, in terms of attacking rule, I think I'm actually supposed to be fighting with the Marauder Horsemen only. But anyway, Throgg now comes, and I think this might have been the only Vomit that I used, but he does have a breath attack. Oh man, really satisfying in the late game. Big old explosion, and that is going to lead those Bestigor to rout. Malagor also routes, and a big turnaround on the balance of power. We're able to bring it back. So an awesome game to Spudhouse, very fun back and forth. And yeah, I failed to bring terror against the Beastmen. If I had, I mean, granted, he did do a great job of kind of getting rid of my caster early on, so I don't know if it would have made that much of a difference if I had Aspect of Dread Knight on the Shaman Sorcerer, but it might have made a little bit of a difference, but hard to say. Regardless, though, Throgg racks up some great value, able to tank out, almost gets killed at the end, but still able to finish it. So fun stuff. In matchups where you're not going up against fire damage, I would say Throgg is a choice you should consider. Greenskins, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. I think maybe Greenskins and Skaven and some of the other ones that don't have, I should say, wide access to fire damage, and especially Lore of Fire. But yeah, as we have seen here, pretty good stuff in that situation from the regeneration standpoint. Skinwolves are an interesting one. Centaurs do actually trade really well into Skinwolves for the most part, if they get kind of good, clean charges, so... yeah, one of my Skinwolves did not do great. The other one did pretty well, but in general, the Centaurs all did pretty solid, considering their costs. Bestigor, likewise, really nice damage on them. This one in particular, 1746, has to be one of the better performances from Bestigor I've seen recently, and granted, some of that is a little bit overinflation because of the healing on Throgg and some of these other high-value targets, but still very good stuff. Ungors also. Ungor Herds are a unit that I had been kind of discounting for a while as one of the worst kind of generic melee infantry, even though I love the spear variant. Ungor spears are probably the best low-tier spears, honestly. Ungor Herd, I don't know, they've actually been performing pretty well lately in different matches I've seen, so maybe I need to give them another look in a future replay. Yeah, Spearman Herd, like I said, super cost-effective in the right engagement. Probably my favorite low-tier spears. Butchers of Kalkengard unfortunately don't pay for themselves. The Terror was pretty good in certain situations, but not quite enough. Yeah, Marauder Horseman did great for me, everything else. But as far as, you know, monstrous infantry lords go, they're in a little bit of an interesting place because in many ways they function like monsters, but they don't give you some of the benefits of monsters. So what I'm referring to is obviously Throgg, as we saw there. You know, you've got Nakai, obviously, for the Lizardmen, is another kind of legendary one that I have spoken about before. Definitely less competitive than Throgg. But that even extends to, like, let's say, the Ancient Crocscore, or for the Skaven, the Rat Ogre Bonebreaker, which, I mean, granted, the Warlord now has the option to go all the way up to the Brood Horror, which actually does cause terror. That's the main issue, is that the monstrous infantry, one of the main benefits, I should say, that you don't get, is you don't, not this guy, sorry, Chieftain also has the Bonebreaker mount. You don't get terror, right? You get many of the drawbacks of a monster, you know, large entity size, potentially bigger hitbox as well, but just not, yeah, not the terror and some of the other benefits, right? Like, well, that's one of the reasons why Orion, who could also be considered a monstrous infantry lord, I mean, obviously he's unbreakable for one, which is amazing, but two, also causes terror, which makes him, at least under the banner rules, classified as a single entity monster, right? Whereas Throgg, Nakai, and the Bonebreaker are not. So it's a little bit of an interesting choice, not advocating necessarily that they should get terror, but just something to consider when you are taking them. Throgg, though, relatively cost-effective. Honestly, doesn't cost too much unless you kit him fully out, but, like, honestly, you can strip him down in 1600 for regenerating, you know, anti-large armor-piercing lord with frostbite, decent stats overall. Pretty solid. His armor definitely leaves something to be lacking, though. So, honestly, like, let's see here. Glittering Robe, 60 armor. You can give it an area of effect as well, but only 6 winds of magic to cast. And I'd have to check. What's the uptime on this? 44 seconds. Pretty decent. Only a 42-second cooldown. It may actually be worth trying out Glittering Robe if you're going to take Throgg in certain matchups to help give him some extra armor. A lot of people won't take a ton of armor piercing against Norsca just because they don't have a lot of armor. So actually, maybe there's something to be looked at there. But yeah, in general, I would say against Beastmen, it's probably his best matchup. Skaven, he can do okay, but also can kind of get killed pretty hard there. He's also not super fast. He's, yeah, 56 speed is decent, but it's not amazing. Bretonnia's one I might consider as well, because, you know, the Paladins are so strong in the meta right now, as well as the Fae. Throgg doesn't do magic damage, right, so he can actually hit the Fae Enchantress. And also the Frostbite will allow him to slow them down, potentially catch them up. Only 55 armor and the possibility of fire arrows, though, from Bretonnia means it's a little bit risky, but they don't have, you know, direct lore of fire per se, although probably likely to bring fire arrows, so... Dwarfs, unfortunately, even though they don't have lore of fire, just the missile presence does make Throgg a little bit hard to operate. Empire's definitely a no, they have great fire tools. Greenskins is an interesting one. Yeah, I don't know. I might consider him in this matchup. A little bit of a weird one for Norsca, but if you're going for like kind of a mobile hit and run style of build, Throgg is a lord that decent enough speed, and with the frostbite and so on, you can potentially use him to kind of run in, get a hit, and then run out, help disrupt, you know, maybe counter if your opponent makes a big push. So in that style of build, I could see him working here. Potentially, yeah, Tomb Kings, he might be good as well. Honestly, a lot of matchups, like, he could be decent. It's just that unfortunately, Wulfric, as I mentioned, on the Mammoth, yeah, probably about actually the same HP, or pretty close to the same HP once you consider the regeneration. And of course, Wulfric also has, you know, this very strong character debuff, also comes with Fight or Die, and Sea Fang, which area of effect damage abilities are, in general, very strong on lords, bound ones, and Sea Fang in particular has been one of the best for a long time. Doesn't do a ton of armor piercing damage, but Frostbite and just great non-armor piercing damage overall. So yeah, as a result, Wulfric kind of gets more of a look. But honestly, if we compare kind of side by side here. Throgg, again, if you can get the benefit of his regeneration, is much cheaper. And in general, you know, offers you some anti-large instead of anti-infantry, a little bit of frostbite, definitely not as tanky with the lack of armor, a little bit lower leadership as well, but yeah, it's interesting. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, though. Again, Beastman's probably the matchup I foresee him being the best in, but I could also see him potentially against a few others. Warriors of Chaos, probably not. Maybe Tomb Kings, actually. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. What matchups would you take Throgg in? Definitely not High Elves or Empire, I would say, and probably not Warriors of Chaos either. But let me know. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. See you next time.